thinking about security, for whatever reason, still, even in 2023, security is often overlooked. Although I am seeing that change a little bit, a lot of people are now thinking about security right off the bat, which I'm happy about that. It's long time coming. But so when we're thinking about security, especially with Kubernetes, you think about it in all aspects. In your planning phase, in your deployment phase, in your day two management phase, you're always thinking about security in one way, shape, or form. Now, one of the things that typically come up quite often is policy enforcement or policy management. Now, it's not super straightforward. You have admission controllers if you want to go that route and write some Go code, create controllers, and do your policy enforcement that way. You have pod security standards, pod security admissions that essentially set up best practices for your pods based on your admission controllers. And if you don't want to go through all that, and to be honest with you, a lot of teams and a lot of engineers are moving towards other solutions. So things like OPA, Open Policy Agent, except even doing that, there is a lot of overhead. You have to write Rego configurations. You have to understand OPA inside and out. You have to understand Gatekeeper, which is like the shim, I'll call it, between OPA and Kubernetes, because Kubernetes doesn't know how to read OPA. It knows what Gatekeeper is because Gatekeeper is a specific controller, and then there's communication back and forth, and that's why I like to call it a shim. So there are a lot of configurations that are needed, and if you're just kind of getting started with this, it can be incredibly overwhelming. So with Portainer, we can do this in 2 to 3 minutes versus with OPA or another solution, it'll take us a week or longer, depending on what you're implementing. So let's go ahead and learn how we can do it in Portainer. All right, so first let's go ahead and look at policy enforcement with OPA outside of Portainer, and then we're going to see what it looks like with Portainer. So first things first, you're going to have to get the actual installation complete. All right, so pretty straightforward, just this Helm chart. You're going to add Gatekeeper, and then you're going to install Gatekeeper. And again, Gatekeeper is that shim. So Kubernetes doesn't know how to speak OPA. OPA doesn't know how to speak Kubernetes. Gatekeeper says, don't worry, I'll take care of that. And it sits in the middle of Kubernetes and OPA. So first you have the installation. Then you have your configuration. So your configuration, you're essentially saying here, hey, Gatekeeper, you're allowed to look at pods. That's it. You're not allowed to look at any other Kubernetes resource. And then you say, okay, let me create my constraint template. And your constraint template is what you want available. So for example, you don't want to use the latest container image version. Instead, you want engineers to have to specify a container image versus using the latest tag. And then you have your constraint template, which actually creates the configuration for you. So you have that declarative configuration here. And then you have this little thing called Rego, which we talked about in the opening, which is pretty much a configuration language to configure, let's try to say that 10 times fast, your policies. Now, not only do you have to learn Rego to get this thing up and running, but you have to write all of this code. And by the way, this is only for one policy. If you have multiple policies in your environment, and you will, based on best practices and based on security policies, you're going to have to do this for every single policy. Now, if we head over to Portainer, let's see how straightforward this is. We can click on our environment. We can go to cluster, security constraints. We can turn on security constraints, and that's it. Now we can specify our policies. Now, of course, there are specified policies here. So if there's a specific policy that you need for your environment that isn't here, well, you would have to use something like a policy enforcer like OPA or something like that. However, a lot of the best practices like running privileged containers, those policies are here. And all you have to do is just click on it, scroll down, click Save Settings, and that's it. You don't have to write any code. You don't have to manage a bunch of YAML. And all you have to do is just click on Restrict Running Privileged Containers, scroll down, and click the Save Settings button. You can even specify multiple here if you'd like, and you can specify some options that are available. And that's it. You don't have to write any code. You don't have to do anything separate. You don't have to manage a bunch of YAML. You simply just do it right under the cluster settings within security constraints.